Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Tanvi Taneja, coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's Home Minister Amit Shah says government plans to implement one nation, one election in its current tenure, highlights the achievements of the first 100 days of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's third term. Jammu and Kashmir all set to vote on Wednesday for its first assembly election after the abrogation of Article 370. Poll process to be completed in 3 phases, counting to be held on October the 8th. Austrian parties scrap election events due to floods. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies warns floods in Europe will likely be more frequent due to climate change. And India lifts the Asian Champions Trophy in men's hockey for a record-extending 5th time. Beats China 1-0 in the final in Ulaanbaatar. India's Narendra Modi government completes 100 days of its third term in office today. Addressing media, Home Minister Amit Shah said that one nation, one election will be implemented before the completion of government's tenure in this term.
वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन उसको लेकर क्या योजना है और कब तक इसको लागू किए जाने की संभावना?
इसी सरकार के कार्यकाल में वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन हम लागू करेंगे.
The Indian Home Minister said that for the first time after 60 years, there is political stability in India and that the country has experienced a continuity in its policies.
60 साल के बाद पहली बार कोई एक नेता तीसरी बार अपनी घोषणा के साथ देश का प्रधानमंत्री बनकर देश का नेतृत्व कर रहा है. 60 साल के बाद पहली बार देश में राजनीतिक स्थिरता का माहौल आया है और नीतियों के सातत्य को भी हमने अनुभव किया है और नीतियों की दिशा, नीतियों की गति और नीतियों को क्रियान्वयन करने की सटीकता, ये तीनों 10 साल तक बरकरार रखकर 11वें साल में प्रवेश करना मैं मानता हूं बहुत कठिन है.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched Subhadra, the flagship scheme of the government of Odisha in Bhubaneswar today. It is the largest single women-centric scheme and is expected to cover more than 1 crore women of India. Prime Minister also initiated the fund transfer into the bank accounts of more than 10 lakh women of the state. The Indian Prime Minister laid the foundation stone and dedicated to the nation railway projects worth over 2,800 crore rupees and laid the foundation stone for national highway projects worth over 1,000 crore rupees. The Prime Minister then released the first installment of assistance to nearly 10 lakh beneficiaries under the Pradhanmantri Awas Yojna Gramin of around 14 states and handed over house keys to PM Awas Gramin and urban beneficiaries. Addressing the gathering, the Prime Minister pointed out that any nation moves faster only when participation of half of its population, that is the women power, is equal. The Indian Prime Minister said that advancement of women and their empowerment will only be the key to Odisha's development.
भाजपा की नई सरकार ने अपने सबसे शुरुआती फैसलों में ही सुभद्रा योजना की सौगात हमारी माताओं बहनों को दी है. इसका लाभ उड़ीसा की 1 करोड़ से ज्यादा महिलाओं को मिलेगा. इस योजना के तहत महिलाओं को कुल 50,000 रुपये की राशि दी जाएगी. ये पैसा समय समय पर आपको मिलता रहेगा. ये राशि सीधे माताओं बहनों के बैंक खाते में भेजी जाएगी।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi also interacted with beneficiaries of PM Awas Yojna Urban in Odisha's Bhubaneswar. The Prime Minister, along with Odisha's Chief Minister Mohan Charan Majhi, visited the homes of beneficiaries who welcomed them with sweets and performed Aarti there. Aarti is a Hindu ritual of worship. India and Romania have completed 75 years of their diplomatic relations, and the ties are moving ahead from strength to strength in the 76th year, ever since they were established way back in 1948. On this occasion, India-Romania joint commemorative postal stamps were released by India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, India's Communications Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia. This stamp symbolizes the enduring friendship and cooperation between both the countries. Speaking on the occasion, Dr. Jaishankar spoke of India's foreign policy moving towards multipolarity and hoped that India-Romania bilateral ties will move ahead in the years ahead.
For us, multipolarity is an emerging reality. We would like to connect more and more deeply with all corners of the world. Obviously, there will be a priority given to the neighborhood, to the extended neighborhood. But this is also an India today whose diplomacy reaches, regions which are far away, are physically far away. That if we, in a way, over the last decade, slowly a global footprint has started to come into being. We certainly hope that this bilateral relationship and the larger relationship with the European Union and with Europe would be an important feature in our diplomacy.
In more news from India, 24 constituencies across the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir will go to polls in the first phase on Wednesday. Polling parties left for their designated polling stations with electronic voting machines ahead of voting to take place on Wednesday. The voting will take place from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. local time tomorrow. Voting could continue after 6 p.m. if there are voters queuing up at the polling stations to exercise their right to vote. Besides, multi-tier security arrangements are in place to ensure free and fair polling, for which teams of the Central Armed Police Force units, State Armed Police Force and State Police are being deployed. The elections in the Union Territory are first since the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019. The other two phases of elections will take place on September 25th and October 1st. The results will be declared on October 8th. On to some international updates now. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces setback as his Liberal Party has lost the crucial Montreal by-election, according to latest preliminary results. The outcome is likely to put pressure on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to step down. Elections in Canada reported that with all votes counted in La Salle, Ahmed Vardoun, Liberal candidate, Laura Palestini finished in second place and narrowly losing to Louis-Philippe Sauve of the separatist bloc Quebecois. Palestini received 27.2% of the vote, while Sauve earned 28%, and the New Democratic Party candidate secured 26.1% vote. The election was held to replace a Liberal legislator who had resigned. European Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen on Tuesday named her team. She will lead the EU's most powerful institution for the next 5 years. The team will focus on challenges posed by climate change, the Ukraine crisis, and the rise of China. Lithuania's Andrei Kubilius has been named as EU's first defense commissioner to build up European military manufacturing capacity. Poland's nominee Piotr Serafin has been made in charge of the overseeing European Union's budget.
First, it's about strengthening our tech sovereignty, our security, and our democracy. For that, we want to build a competitive, decarbonized, and circular economy with a fair transition for all. We will only be able to do that if we design a bold industrial strategy with innovation and investment at its heart. So to a certain extent, it's not preserving the old, but via innovation and investment really embracing the new.
German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock on Tuesday announced an additional €100 million in aid for Ukraine. The decision comes at a time when Russia and Ukraine have repeatedly conducted strikes on one another, causing destruction and damage to both countries.
People's biggest concern here is that should Ukraine fall, Moldova will be next. That is why support for Ukraine also means support for Moldova and European democracy overall. So it's a good sign that today I brought with me to Moldova €100 million of winter aid for Ukraine, because it's clear that autumn is arriving and winter is on our doorstep. And Russia's hybrid war means another winter war with the aim to make people's lives in Ukraine as horrible as possible.
Winterkrieg mit dem Ziel, das Leben der Menschen in der Ukraine so furchtbar wie möglich.
In a move that will make Russian army the world's second largest in the world after China, President Vladimir Putin has ordered an increase in the size of the existing troops to 1.5 million active servicemen. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov informed reporters on Tuesday. The move comes amid growing threats on the western borders and instability on the eastern borders of the country. A quick look next on what else is making news across the world. French national Dominque Pelot sought the forgiveness of his family and admitted to various criminal charges on Tuesday. Pelot has been accused of drugging his wife, recruiting dozens of strangers to rape her, and many other charges. He was due to testify last week but failed due to bad health. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz assured that the country will go ahead with a plan to build a semiconductor plant in East German city of Magdeburg, despite postponing it for 2 years. The delay in the project is due to cost-cutting measures in place by the government. Mali's capital Bamako remained tense on Tuesday after army thwarted an insurgent attack in training school. Government said that the situation is under control. Al-Qaeda affiliate group has claimed responsibility for an attack on a training school. A natural gas liquid pipeline that caught fire in La Porte, Texas, burned for the second day on Tuesday. Firefighters doused nearby houses to prevent the flames from spreading. Authorities initiated the investigation and operators shut off the flow of natural gas liquids in the pipeline. Still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Donald Trump blames his election rivals Kamala Harris and Joe Biden for the recent assassination attempt on his life, whereas Kiev says suspect Ryan Routh has no ties to the Ukraine government. And a simple trip to the grocery store has turned into quite a nightmare for German consumers. We will tell you why.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
India Live, I'm Tanvi Taneja. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that enabling residents to return to communities in northern Israel that have been evacuated because of attacks by the Lebanon-based group Hezbollah is now a goal of the Gaza conflict. This comes a day after the country's defense minister said that the only way left to ensure the return of the northern communities will be via military action as Hezbollah continues to align itself with Hamas. Tens of thousands of Israelis have been evacuated after Hezbollah stepped up its attacks on Israel. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said on Tuesday that the state agencies will investigate the attempted assassination on Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump at his West Palm Beach golf course. A 58-year-old man suspected of planning to assassinate Donald Trump has been charged with 2 gun-related crimes. According to court documents filed on Monday, the suspect may have been lying in wait for nearly 12 hours, hiding in the bushes with a loaded semi-automatic rifle.
What's your name, Austin? Ryan?
The state of Florida has jurisdiction over the most serious, straightforward offense, which is attempted murder. I've directed state agencies to move expeditiously and to provide full transparency to the public.
Meanwhile, a Kiev official said on Tuesday that Trump's assassination suspect, Ryan Routh, had no ties with the Ukrainian government.
To answer, but I'm still curious.
Ukraine strongly condemns this criminal act and all forms of political violence. We are glad that the suspect was apprehended so quickly, and we want to emphasize that this suspect has no ties to Ukrainian government institutions and has never fought for Ukraine as part of the International Legion or other units of Ukraine's defense forces.
Republican White House candidate Donald Trump blamed his election rival Kamala Harris and US President Joe Biden for the recent assassination attempt on his life. In an interview, Trump said that the suspect's actions were directly influenced by the highly inflammatory language of Biden and Harris. He argued that the dangerous rhetoric and legal challenges he faces are fueling the actions of dangerous fools, such as the man who allegedly planned to assassinate him. US President Joe Biden commended the Secret Service for its handling of an apparent assassination attempt on Donald Trump. He said there is no place for political violence in the United States of America.
Let me just say, there is no, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, those of you who know me, many of you do, no place in political violence for political violence in America. None. Zero. Never. I've always condemned political violence. I always will in America. In America, we resolve our differences peacefully at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun. America suffered too many times the tragedy of an assassin's bullet. It solves nothing and just tears the country apart. We must do everything we can to prevent it and never give it any oxygen.
On to Europe now. Over the past few years, a simple trip to a grocery store has turned into quite a nightmare for European consumers, especially for German consumers, actually. The country used to have a real low food prices, but they've gone up in the recent past. Lars Holter is with Deutsche Welle and he joins me from Berlin now on the story. Lars, who's to blame for the higher prices?
Thanks for having me. Well, that's an excellent question. Indeed, it is the question a new study by German economic paper Handelsblatt has been looking into, because for the past couple of years, consumers were wondering if producers had raised their prices or if retailers were to blame. Of course, those two parties simply blamed each other. Well, now the not entirely surprising answer is both are indeed to blame for food price inflation in Europe. Let me give you some names and some numbers. Now, first of all, for an overall look, prices for food and non-alcoholic beverages were up more than 12% in 2023, and going back to 2020, pretty much before the time COVID and then the energy crisis hit, prices are actually up by around a third. That's, of course, much more than regular inflation, and it put a real strain on people. Now, this new study I mentioned found that Europe's largest grocery store chains, in Germany that's Rewe and Metro, there's Britain's Tesco, and in France Carrefour, they were able to raise profits by 3.8%. Meanwhile, the big food producers like Nestle and Unilever raised profits by 3%. So in both cases, those higher profits were evidently achieved on the back of consumers.
Lars, but what's behind this aggressive effort to raise prices?
That's easy for both retailers and producers. It's pretty much the same. They're saying that they have to deal with higher cost for rent, for labor, for ingredients, and yes, of course, especially for energy. And it's true, those prices all went up, but the study found too that they didn't actually rise as much as to support the kind of prices that retailers and producers were actually seeking for their products. Be it as it may, food inflation is a tough phenomenon for consumers to deal with. We're not talking about discretionary spending here after all. Prices go up on certain things, well, maybe you just don't buy it. Prices go up for food and beverages. You might want to buy a bit less, but consumers can't stop buying groceries, so they're feeling the pinch.
Lars Halter, thank you for those updates. Lars Halter joining us from Deutsche Welle, Berlin. World Bank Country Director Abdullah Seko on Tuesday said that the World Bank can mobilize about $2 billion new financing aid to Bangladesh in this fiscal year to support critical reforms. Sek spoke about this new assistance when he met the head of interim government of Bangladesh, Professor Muhammad Yunus, in Dhaka. He said that the extra lending would raise the amount of soft loans and grant the World Bank would be giving to Bangladesh this fiscal year to about $3 billion once the funds from the existing projects are repurposed. From Europe to Asia, harsh weather events are wreaking havoc. The mayhem caused by Typhoon Yagi continues, with the death toll in Myanmar surpassing 226 in just a week. Meanwhile, torrential rains have caused floods in Central Europe. More worrisome is the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies warning that these floods in Central Europe are likely to become more frequent soon. DD India's Mihir Mekuri covers all the latest weather updates from around the globe.
Catastrophic weather patterns continue to wreak havoc in different parts of the world. With COP29 round the corner, the Azerbaijani leadership laid out its plans on Tuesday for what it hoped to achieve as countries continue to wrestle with how to raise ambitions for a new financing target. They unveiled over a dozen new initiatives, including a fund supported by fossil fuel producers to aid climate projects and grants for tackling climate-related disasters in developing nations. From wildfires to floods to drought, the unprecedented weather is being witnessed across the globe. Streets and houses remain submerged after heavy rains triggered floods in parts of Central Europe with at least 19 deaths. Residents of the northern Czech city of Ostrava were rescued from their home as police deployed choppers after the worst flooding in more than 2 decades left a long trail of destruction. $260 million has been set aside by the Polish government for the victims affected by the flood. The regions around the border between the Czech Republic and Poland were hit hard.
The losses are unimaginable for the city. All the bridges are broken, asphalt is coming off. The town doesn't have the funds to repair it. The city looks like an apocalypse. I would call it a ghost town.
More than 40,000 people in southern Poland have been evacuated after the embankment was damaged. Residents of the Nysa city gathered sandbags and left their homes to help prevent Kolodska River's embankment from completely caving in. In Romania, the flooding killed at least 7 people over the last few days. In the wake of devastating floods, political parties in Austria have been forced to cancel or postpone election events scheduled for Monday. The country is now grappling with a massive cleanup effort as it confronts the aftermath of the disaster. Firefighters in Portugal and Spain are engaged in a fierce struggle against widespread wildfires. Central and northern Portugal have reported at least 4 fatalities and multiple evacuations. In Spain's northwest, particularly around Brunyolas, while recent firefighting efforts show promise, the fires continue to rage. Many Asian nations are also facing large-scale flooding. Typhoon Yagi left swaths of areas inundated with surge waters in its wake. The death toll in the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar has reached 226 on Tuesday, with 77 people still missing and over 150,000 homes flooded. Nature's fury is also not ending for Vietnam after Typhoon Yagi set off floods and landslides that killed more than 290 people in the north. The country is now preparing for more flooding, with the tropical depression forecast to strengthen into a storm as it heads to its central coast. But there is still a ray of hope for the world. Following global efforts to phase out ozone-depleting chemicals, the World Meteorological Organization reported on Tuesday that the world's ozone layer is on the road to long-term recovery despite a recent destructive volcanic eruption in the South Pacific. Mihir Makri reporting for DD India.
In a notable development aimed at community welfare, the India's Ministry of Home Affairs launched a program on Tuesday to offer affordable commodities to the people of Manipur. As part of this initiative, 37 Kendriya Police Kalyan Bhandars, including 21 existing outlets and 16 newly established ones, are now open to the local public.
An initiative has been launched to provide the commodities and essential items of daily needs to the people of Manipur at reasonable and affordable price through our CAPF canteens. These are the subsidiary canteens of our Kendriya Police Kalyan Bhandars, and it has started from today. As per direction, there have been 16 new canteens open, 8 in valley and 8 in hills, apart from the existing ones. And they all have been opened up for the community members, the common public, from today onwards.
And Indian men's hockey team clinched the Asian Champions Trophy second time in a row after defeating China 1-0 in the final in Ulaanbaatar city. India is the most successful team in the competition with 5 titles. While China featured in its first ever final today, India had advanced to the Asian Champions Trophy hockey final for the 6th time. India have remained undefeated in the men's Asian Champions Hockey tournament. So that's all for this edition of DD India Live. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Twitter. And also for quick news and updates on the go, you can download our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. So we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.